The emergency dispatch center erupted into chaos as the call came through and at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. The voice on the other end was frantic, breathless. "There's a man with a gun at Eastgate Mall. He's got people trapped in the food court. Multiple hostages. Send everyone." Within minutes, the police station transformed into a whirlwind of activity. Officers grabbed their gear, checked their weapons, and rushed toward their vehicles. The sergeant's voice boomed over the intercom. "All available units to Eastgate Mall. We have a confirmed hostage situation. This is not a drill." Among the officers suiting up was Christopher Hayes, a rookie who had been on the force for only 6 months. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his bulletproof vest. The other officers moved with practiced efficiency around him, their movements sharp and confident. Hayes tried to keep up, but his nervous energy was obvious. As they prepared to leave, Sergeant Rodriguez noticed Hayes struggling with his radio equipment. "Hayes, you good?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already doubted the answer. "Yes, sir. Just getting ready," Hayes replied, his stutter more pronounced under pressure. Rodriguez exchanged glances with Officer Martinez, who was loading ammunition into his belt. "Kid's been here 6 months and still can't get through roll call without stumbling," Martinez muttered under his breath. "Maybe he should stay back and handle dispatch," suggested Officer Thompson, checking his weapon. "This isn't the place for nerves." But Hayes overheard them. He'd been hearing variations of these comments since his first day at the academy. The doubt in their voices, the way they looked at him when he struggled to get words out during briefings. He understood their concerns, but it still stung. "I'm going," Hayes said quietly, his voice barely audible over the commotion. "What was that? Hayes?" Rodriguez called out. Hayes took a deep breath, forcing himself to speak clearly. "I said I'm going, sir. I'm ready." Rodriguez studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but you stay back when we get there. This is a volatile situation." The convoy of police vehicles raced through the city streets, sirens wailing and lights flashing. Hayes sat in the passenger seat of one of the squad cars, his partner, Officer Davis, at the wheel. Davis was a veteran with 15 years on the force, and he'd seen his share of hostage situations. "You ever been in one of these before?" Davis asked, glancing at Hayes. "No, sir. This is my first." "It's not like the movies, kid. People are scared. Emotions are running high. Sometimes talking is more important than tactics." Hayes nodded, taking in the advice. He'd always been better at listening than speaking anyway. When they arrived at Eastgate Mall, the scene was already controlled chaos. Police cars formed a perimeter around the building, their red and blue lights casting an eerie glow across the parking lot. Crowds of shoppers who had escaped were being interviewed by officers, their faces pale with shock. The mall itself looked like a fortress under siege. Most of the stores had pulled down their security gates, and the parking lot was eerily quiet except for the static of police radios and the occasional shout from a commanding officer. Captain Williams, a stern woman in her 50s who had been handling crisis situations for over 2 decades, stood at the center of it all. She was coordinating with the SWAT team, the negotiators, and the emergency medical personnel who were standing by. "What do we know?" she asked, as her team gathered around a makeshift command post set up behind one of the larger police vehicles. Detective Morgan, who had been first on the scene, pulled out his notepad. "Suspect is a 34-year-old male named David Chen. He's barricaded in the food court with approximately 12 hostages. We've confirmed he has a weapon, appears to be a handgun. No shots fired yet, but he's making demands. What kind of demands? Captain Williams asked. He wants to talk to his ex-wife. Says she won't return his calls. He's been drinking, according to witnesses who saw him before this all started. Classic domestic situation that's escalated. Hayes stood at the edge of the group, listening intently. He could hear the fear in the detective's voice, the way everyone was trying to maintain their professional composure while dealing with a situation that could turn deadly at any moment. "Have we established communication?" the captain asked. "We've tried." He answered the phone once but hung up when our negotiator started talking. Said he didn't want to talk to anyone who sounded like a cop. Through the mall's glass doors, they could see movement in the food court. Occasionally, a figure would pass by one of the windows, but it was impossible to get a clear view of what was happening inside. The police negotiator, a calm man named Officer Brett, who had successfully handled dozens of similar situations, tried again. He picked up the phone and dialed the number for the mall's customer service desk, which they knew was located near the food court. "David, this is Officer Brett with the police. I just want to talk to you. See if we can work this out." There was silence on the other end for a long moment, then a voice slurred and angry. "I told you people I don't want to talk to any cops. You all sound the same. All authority and no understanding. David, I understand you're going through a difficult time." "No, you don't understand anything." The voice on the phone grew louder, more agitated. "You think you can just talk me down with your textbook psychology? I've heard it all before." The line went dead. Officer Brett tried calling back several times, but David wouldn't answer. Each attempt seemed to make the situation more tense. Through the windows, they could see the hostages huddled together at tables in the food court, their faces etched with terror. Captain Williams was growing frustrated. "We need to establish communication, or we're going to have to consider other options." The SWAT team leader, a burly man named Commander Stone, stepped forward. "My team is ready, Captain. We've identified 3 potential entry points. We could move in within minutes." "And risk the lives of 12 civilians?" Captain Williams shook her head. "That's a last resort." Hayes had been listening to all of this, his mind racing. He thought about what Davis had said in the car about talking, being more important than tactics. He thought about David Chen, a man who was clearly in crisis, who had said he didn't want to talk to anyone who sounded like a cop. Hayes had never sounded like a typical cop. His stutter, his nervous energy, the way he sometimes stumbled over words, it had always been a source of embarrassment. But maybe, just maybe, it could be an asset here. "Key Captain," Hayes said, his voice barely above a whisper. Captain Williams was deep in conversation with the SWAT commander and didn't hear him. "Captain Williams," Hayes tried again, louder this time. She turned around, looking surprised to see the young officer. "Hayes? What is it?" I think I should try to talk to him." The group fell silent. Several officers exchanged glances. Sergeant Rodriguez stepped forward. "Hayes, this isn't the time for—" "No, wait," Hayes interrupted, his stutter more pronounced, but his voice gaining strength. "He said he doesn't want to talk to anyone who sounds like a cop." "Well, I don't really sound like a cop, do I?" Captain Williams studied him carefully. "Hayes, this is a delicate situation. We need someone with experience." "With respect, Captain, experience hasn't worked so far." He hung up on Officer Brett and Officer Brett is the best negotiator we have. Maybe he needs to talk to someone who doesn't sound so official. Someone who sounds scared. The silence stretched on. Hayes could feel everyone looking at him, probably thinking the same thing they always thought, that he wasn't cut out for this job. But then Davis spoke up. Kid might have a point. Sometimes the best negotiators are the ones who don't sound like negotiators. Captain Williams looked at her watch. They'd been on scene for 45 minutes, and the situation wasn't improving. Every minute that passed increased the risk of violence. Hayes, she said finally, have you ever done anything like this before? No, ma'am, but I've been the scared person before. I know what it feels like to be judged, to feel like no one understands you. She considered this. What would you say to him? Hayes thought for a moment. I'd tell him the truth, that I'm scared too, that I don't have all the answers, that I just want everyone to go home safely. Captain Williams looked around at her team. The traditional approaches weren't working. Maybe it was time to try something different. All right, Hayes, you get one chance, but you follow my lead, and if I tell you to stop, you stop immediately. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Hayes walked over to the communications setup, his hands shaking slightly. He could feel the weight of everyone's attention on him. If he failed, if someone got hurt because of his inexperience, he'd never forgive himself. He picked up the phone and dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered, "What?" "Hi, David. My name is Christopher Hayes. I'm with the police, but I'm not calling to give you orders or tell you what to do. I just wanted to see if you were okay." There was a long pause. Hayes could hear breathing on the other end of the line. "You sound different," David said, finally. "Different? How?" "I don't know. Younger, maybe? Less cop-like." Hayes almost smiled despite the situation. "Yeah, I get that a lot. I'm pretty new at this. To be honest, I'm really nervous right now." "You're nervous? You're not the one with a gun pointed at you." "No, but I am the one who has to try to make sure everyone gets out of there safely, including you. And I have no idea what I'm doing." Another pause. "At least you're honest about it." "David, can I ask you something? Are you okay? I mean, not just right now, but are you okay?" For the first time, David's voice softened slightly. "I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time. Do you want to talk about it? I mean, we don't have to talk about all this. We can just talk." Hayes looked around at the other officers. They were all listening intently, some nodding encouragingly, others looking skeptical. But Captain Williams gave him a small nod to continue. "My wife left me," David said suddenly, 6 months ago. She said she couldn't deal with my drinking anymore. Said I was angry all the time. That must have been really hard. It was. I tried to get help, you know. I went to counseling, started going to AA meetings, but she wouldn't even talk to me, wouldn't return my calls. I just wanted to talk to her, to show her I was getting better. Hayes could hear the pain in David's voice, the desperation. "Have you been drinking today, David?" "Yeah. I know I shouldn't have. I was doing good for a while, but today I just couldn't handle it anymore. I came here to call her from the mall phone. Thought maybe if I called from a different number she'd pick up. But she didn't. And I lost it. What happened then? I don't really remember. I think I started yelling, and people got scared. Then I remembered I had this gun in my car. I bought it for protection after the divorce. living alone and all. I went and got it, and when I came back, people were running away from me. So I told them to stay. Hayes could picture the scene. A man in crisis, drunk and desperate, making a series of bad decisions that escalated into this nightmare situation. David, are the people with you okay? Are they hurt? No, I haven't hurt anyone. I would never hurt anyone. I just want my wife to talk to me. I understand. But right now, you have 12 people who are really scared. They have families who are worried about them, just like you want your wife to worry about you. I know this is wrong. I just don't know how to stop it now. This was the opening Hayes had been hoping for. You can stop it right now, David. You can let those people go home to their families. And then what? I go to prison? My life is already over. Your life isn't over. You said you were getting help, going to counseling. That shows you want to change. People will see that. Hayes paused, thinking about his own struggles, his own moments of feeling like a failure. David, can I tell you something? I almost didn't become a cop. I have a speech impediment. I stutter sometimes. People told me I wasn't cut out for this job, that I'd never be able to handle the pressure. But you did become a cop. Yeah, but not without a lot of doubt. There are still days when I wonder if everyone else is right, if I'm just fooling myself. But you know what I learned? Sometimes the things that make us different, the things that make us feel like failures, those can be our strengths too. How is stuttering a strength? Because it makes me listen more. It makes me think before I speak. It makes me more careful with my words. And right now, it's helping me talk to you, because I don't sound like every other cop who's probably tried to tell you what to do. David was quiet for a long moment. I never thought about it that way. Your drinking problem, your divorce, the fact that you recognize you need help, that's not weakness, David. That's honesty. That's the beginning of getting better. But I've screwed up so badly. Look what I've done. You haven't hurt anyone, David. You're talking to me right now instead of making this worse. That tells me you're not a bad person. You're just a person who's made some bad choices. Hayes could see Captain Williams watching him intently, along with all the other officers. He realized that this conversation had been going on for nearly 20 minutes, longer than any of the previous attempts at communication. David, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Do you really want to hurt those people? Number God, no. I never wanted any of this to happen. Then let them go. Let them go home to their families. We can figure out the rest later. But what about me? What happens to me? Hayes looked at Captain Williams, who nodded slightly. I can't make you any promises about what happens legally, David, but I can promise you that if you let those people go, if you put down the weapon and come out peacefully, you'll be treated with respect. You'll get the help you need. You promise? I promise. And David, I'll be right here. When you come out, I'll be the first person you see. You won't be alone. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Hayes could hear muffled voices, probably David talking to the hostages. Then David's voice came back on the line. Officer Hayes? I'm here, David. I'm going to let them go, but I'm scared. I know. I'm scared too. But we're going to do this together, okay? Okay. Hayes watched as the mall's front doors opened. One by one, the hostages began to emerge. They moved quickly but carefully, their faces showing relief and terror in equal measure. Emergency medical personnel rushed to meet them, checking for injuries and providing immediate care. Hayes counted as they came out. 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 12. All accounted for. All safe. David, I can see that everyone is out. You did the right thing. Now it's time for you to come out too. I'm scared, Officer Hayes. I know. But remember, I promised I'd be here. I'm going to walk toward the door now, and when you're ready, you come out. Just put the gun down first, okay? Okay. Hayes handed the phone to Captain Williams and started walking towards the mall entrance. He could hear the other officers behind him, their voices tense with concern. Hayes, don't get too close, Captain Williams called out. I know, ma'am. I'm just going to where he can see me. Hayes stopped about 50 feet from the entrance, close enough that David would be able to see him clearly when he emerged. He raised his hand slightly, showing that he was unarmed. After what felt like an eternity, the doors opened again. David Chen emerged, his hands raised, no weapon visible. He looked around at all the police officers, the flashing lights, the crowd of onlookers, and for a moment, Hayes thought he might panic and run back inside. But then their eyes met. David saw Hayes, the young officer who had talked to him for the past half hour, who had listened to his story and treated him like a human being instead of just a criminal. Officer Hayes, David called out. I'm here, David. You did great. It's over now. David walked slowly toward Hayes, his hand still raised. When he was about 10 feet away, he stopped and said, Thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting me. Other officers moved in then, gently taking David into custody. He didn't resist. As they led him away, he looked back at Hayes one more time and nodded. The scene began to wind down. The hostages were being interviewed and checked by medical personnel. The media had arrived and was setting up their cameras. The crisis was over, and everyone was safe. Hayes stood by himself for a moment, watching it all unfold. He felt a mix of relief, exhaustion, and something else. Pride, maybe. He had done something important here, something that mattered. Sergeant Rodriguez approached him, the same sergeant who had doubted his abilities just a few hours earlier. Hayes, he said, and Hayes braced himself for criticism or analysis of what he could have done better. Yes, sir. That was good work in there. Really good work. Hayes looked up, surprised. Thank you, sir. I owe you an apology. I've been judging you based on how you sound, not on what you're capable of. That was wrong of me. Sir, I understand why people have doubts. I have them too. Maybe those doubts are what make you good at this. You don't assume you have all the answers. You listen. Other officers were approaching now, offering their congratulations and praise. Hayes felt overwhelmed by the attention, but also grateful. For the first time since joining the force, he felt like he truly belonged. Captain Williams was the last to approach him. Hayes, I want to talk to you about getting some additional training, crisis negotiation, hostage situations. You have a natural talent for this. Really? Really? What you did in there, that wasn't luck. That was skill. You connected with him in a way that our trained negotiators couldn't. That's not something you can teach in a classroom. As the sun began to set, Hayes finally got a chance to sit down and process what had happened. Officer Davis found him sitting in one of the squad cars, looking exhausted. How you feeling, kid? Tired. And, I don't know. Different, I guess. Different how? Hayes thought about it. For the first time since I became a cop, I feel like I actually helped someone. Not just followed procedures or filled out paperwork, but actually made a difference. That's what this job is about, not the car chases or the shootouts you see in movies. It's about helping people on the worst days of their lives. I used to think my stutter was a weakness, something that held me back. And now? Now I think maybe it's just part of who I am, and maybe that's okay. 6 months later, Hayes received his certification as a crisis negotiator. He had successfully handled dozens of situations, from domestic disputes to suicide interventions. His approach was always the same: listen first, judge second, and treat everyone with dignity and respect. David Chen got the help he needed. He went through a treatment program, continued with counseling, and eventually was able to have a conversation with his ex-wife. They didn't get back together, but they found a way to communicate without anger and pain. He sometimes thought about Officer Hayes, the young cop who had seen him as a person instead of just a problem to be solved. In his recovery meetings, he would tell his story, including the part about the police officer who admitted he was scared too. Hayes never forgot that day at the mall. It became the defining moment of his career, the day he learned that sometimes the very things that make us feel different or inadequate can become our greatest strengths. He kept David's words in mind whenever he faced a new crisis. At least you're honest about it. Honesty, vulnerability, and genuine human connection, these became the tools of his trade. And he never stopped stuttering, but he also never stopped talking to people who needed someone to listen. In a world full of loud voices and quick judgments, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is speak softly and with genuine care. The rookie who had once been told he didn't belong had found his place, not in spite of his differences, but because of them. And every person he helped along the way was proof that strength comes in many forms, and heroes don't always look like what we expect them to.